left off in our last webinar, we covered how to strategically stand out in your community using your Google Business Profile, especially your reviews. We talked a little bit about the strategies of how you can collect reviews and just some things to look out for, right, to protect yourself as far as your online reputation. Now, if you want to catch up on any of that content, per usual, we're going to be providing some links after this session where you can access today's recording and then also recordings in the past. Otherwise, we're moving right into additional tools that Google Business Profile has to offer you and your business. So, Corey, if you are ready, it's yours. Take it away.
Right on. Thanks, Meredith. And we do have a pretty nice free offer at the end. So for those who stick around, you'll get the opportunity to send an email off and get a cool free offer. But we'll talk about that more a little later. Just quickly going through, we're going to cover the customer journey again. We're going to talk about ranking on Google and how that works. Some of the key features of Google Business Profile. We'll talk about how Google Business Profile really is a social account and we should be treating it that way. And then we cover some things that we can be doing to stand out and answer any questions that you guys have. So as you're going along, this is absolutely interactive. So if you have questions, please reach out. Um, with Google Business Profile, I've been in the entrepreneurship space for well over a decade now. And so I have experience with my own businesses. I've been a consultant with Invisalign, helping orthodontic specialists, uh, just a full business consultant. And then we've got this marketing company as well. And one of those reasons that we started it was because when we'd go in and talk to dental specialists, they'd always ask, like, how do we get more patients in the practice? Should we be doing events? What should we be doing? And when we really dug into that, we found that there wasn't a lack of customers. It was just a challenge for customers, for patients to connect to practices and choose, who do I go to? Like, how do I choose one? And as a society now, we rely so much on social proof. Like, we go for everything to Google or Amazon, and you look at those reviews to see, like, what's everybody else think about this? Even movies and shows and that. I'm always on IMDb looking at what's everybody else saying. And Google is the first place that most people go, whether they get a referral and it's already recommended, they'll still go even just to check out an address or a phone number. They see that Google ranking and they see the images on Google Business Profile. They start to build that first impression of the practice and either continue on, which brings us into the customer journey. They either continue on that customer journey and make an appointment, or they get a bad first impression and they start opening up that question for other options. So the customer buyer journey, for those who don't know, it's everybody goes through this same process regardless of what you buy. It doesn't matter whether it's a car or scheduling an appointment to get a root canal. You always go through the same process. You first become aware that a problem exists, and then you consider your options to solve it, which is where Google Business Profile comes in. You make a decision on whether or not you're going to make that purchase or which one you're going to do to solve the problem. And then you either stay or go somewhere else, and then you talk about it or you don't. So that's the customer buyer journey. And with this, so the Google Business Profile, it really works in full circle because with reviews, with people talking about it, it goes back and bolsters the consideration portion of that person's customer buyer journey. So what we're really trying to do is plug those holes where somebody could fall out at any one of these stages.
And I love that. And definitely emphasizing that referred patients still have an option, right? Because we always think that referral or referred care is just going to automatically bring the patient over there. But I can't tell you how many times just working in the general dentistry space that I definitely get some feedback from patients saying, like, is this my only option at that
Yeah.
point? For whatever reason, if it was insurance or their initial perception or that first phone call, whatever the reason would be, they still have the option, right, to go elsewhere. So just because there is a referral and you have that referral relationship build up with your general dentist in the area, doesn't mean that patients don't still have autonomy over their care, right? And they still have the ability to go elsewhere if they're not
Right.
comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about this before and building those relationships with with your local dentist are great, and it's really important to rely on those referral relationships. But as you said, it's a referral is just that. It's just a recommendation. And then a person has the opportunity to do their own research. And again, even just looking up an address or looking up a phone number, that can change that customer buyer journey to go back into the consideration phase and say, what are my other options? Is this the best option for me to solve my problem?
Yep.
So the way that we plug that hole is ranking. You want to rank high on Google Business Profile. You want to make sure that if somebody is searching you, they get a great first impression. But if they're just searching it in general, if they don't have that recommendation, they type in best endodontist near me, that your profile is popping up first in that list on the left, and that you stand out from everybody else. So it really makes that process simple for the person looking for care to choose you. um, Google Business Profile, they take priority. So if you have a profile, that's obviously the most important. It's going to come up. Um, but it's a lot of people aren't actively updating it. And so every time you get a review, Google basically is they're in the business of providing answers to the questions that people have. And so the way that Google does it is with algorithms. It's very confusing. We never know exactly what Google's algorithm is or how they weight things, but we do know that Google is looking at things like, is your profile complete? That will up your ranking. If you have open areas, it lowers it down. Google thinks you don't care as much or you're not as invested, so it's not the best answer. There's better answers out there. If you are updating your profile consistently, Google recognizes that and they're saying, oh, this business is actively updating their profile. Therefore, those answers are probably going to be better than somebody that hasn't touched theirs or had any reviews in 3 years. So, all of these keeping active on Google Business Profile is really important. It tells the algorithm that this is relevant and potentially a good answer for somebody's question to solve somebody's question.
And that's where our eyes are going, right? Whether we're on the phone or we're on the computer. I mean, if you do a Google search of any kind, whether you're searching for that practice specifically or you're doing a general, like you said, endodontist in my area search, I think Google has trained us now where we are
Yeah.
going for graphical section of the Google search. And me personally, I'm not going through each one of the links that comes below. My eye immediately goes to where are my Google business profiles where I can get additional information. And to your point, and probably to Google's as well, is if the profile isn't complete, it does kind of create this initial impression of, well, maybe they're not as established. Maybe they don't, pay enough attention to have everything together and ready to go for patients. So it does kind of create this preemptive response of, wow, I don't know if this is what the Google business profile is like, what is their actual care and business structure going to be like? It does kind of create some uncertainty there. It's nuanced and very subtle, but it's
Right.
definitely there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it just opens up questions that people have to ask. It's
Yeah.
why is this not complete? Why are there no photos? Why? And in the minute that you open up that question of, is this the best solution for my problem? You keep people from, you prevent people from moving forward quickly in that customer, in the buyer journey.
Yeah.
And so we really want to minimize, again, any opportunity that can prevent somebody from moving forward. And I do this all the time. If I'm traveling, I'll look up hotels or I'll look up restaurants. We were out in town and I saw a restaurant that looked really cool and looked good. And we're right in front of it. But I quickly looked it up on Google and it had a poor review. And as I was reading through, it was like the food used to be good. There was a change of management. The food's not good anymore. They hadn't addressed any of those issues and they lost business because we would have gone, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Uh, so we definitely want to prevent that from occurring. So some of the key features within the Google Business Profile. What we want to be doing is we want it to be asking for reviews. We covered that in the last webinar on the best practices to do so. Ideally, 5 stars, 4.8, 4.9. This is a little contentious. It's 5 stars can feel like they're not genuine, but if you have enough, it just really says like the practices, the business is doing well. People like them. But if you do have like a, a 4.8, a 4.9, that can be really good as well because it shows that we've got a full range of customers. There's always going to be angry people who leave reviews that, you'd prefer that they didn't. But even with those, that can be an amazing opportunity for you as a business to show that um, you're aware and taking care of people, even if they're upset. So if somebody is upset about something, they leave a bad review. If they are a patient, you can high level address the concerns and say, we're on this, we're making a phone call. If somebody else reads that, it's it's easy for them to be like, oh, I'm still going to be in good hands. If it's not somebody that you recognize, you can say, hey, we don't recognize you as a patient at our practice. Please give us a call. But at least it's showing that you're attentive.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that I had an aha moment when when you and I first talked about that. I never really thought about the 4-star categories. I mean, there's a pretty wide range, right? So there's definitely that tipping point where we significantly start to question, how good a service might be or a business might be at providing service to its clients. And you had mentioned to me that really goals for anyone that you work with is really in the 4.8 or higher
Yep.
range. And I thought that was really not crazy, but it definitely took me by surprise because I guess in my mind I kept thinking, yeah, you want to be at least 4.5 or higher, but really it's not striving for perfection. We're just really striving for consistency at that
Yes.
point of higher reviews. So Corey does have very high standards, so he's going to say a 4.6 is probably not ideal, right? We're shooting for those higher 4-star elements, but it's one of those things where if you didn't catch our recording last time, you definitely want to go back and watch it because we cover how to create a safety net for yourself of these 5-star reviews. Because, like he said, you can't avoid the occasional patient that isn't a good fit for your practice. There is going to be a patient that for whatever reason, their expectations exceed what is even possible in a dental practice of any scope. And you can't really prevent those things from happening if they get on your account and they pretty much put out there that they had a bad experience. And it's very difficult to get them taken off,
Yeah.
right? So to Corey's point, if you can build a larger mass of reviews, then you're more likely to be able to protect yourself from, those instances. So that way your rating overall doesn't drop down considerably. But then on top of that, how you respond really makes a huge difference too, because anyone who encounters your Google business account doesn't just see that bad review, but they see how you responded. And that's your
Right.
golden opportunity to even take like a 1-star review and make it a little less hurtful than a 1-star review at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, it can actually really help the experience because if it's all 5 stars, again, it can open up that question of like, are they really perfect? Like,
Yeah.
but if there's a 1-star review that takes you down to a 4.9 and you respond accordingly and you respond authentically and genuine and are still taking care of that person, it's again gonna to make that person or make the person reading the review feel more confident and comfortable in working with you. um Again, having the high reviews also, like you said, just protects you a little bit. If you have 40 reviews and you get a 1 star, it's going to knock you down. We in our experience have found usually about 25-star reviews is what it takes, under like if you're in the 100-ish range, to get up 1 point. So if you're at a 4.6, it's like 25-star reviews to get to a 4.7. So it's a lot of work to go up, but that 1 star can bring you down pretty quickly. If you've got a couple hundred, it's not gonna affect you drastically.
And that's not a full recoupment, right? I mean, that's just
Mm.
like making your way back up. So yeah, the
Yeah.
fall is a lot harder than getting back to where you need to be. So yeah.
Yep. So again, if you haven't watched the last one, go back and do it. But reviews definitely very, very important. The Q&A section. There is a Q&A section on Google Business Profile. So it works in twofold. One, if somebody's searching that question or in relation to your practice, it'll come up. And then with a Q&A, if somebody has these questions ahead of time that is preventing them from moving forward in that customer buyer journey, you can address it right there. And it just prevents those stopping points.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before when you first introduced the Q&A section to me. Keep in mind, guys, I learned all of this the same as you are now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got to share this with our endos. So when you first shared this with me, I had no idea that you could curate your own Q&A section. I just
Yes.
assumed that you could only build it up as people went in and physically asked questions. In my mind, I was like, who's going to do that? Like, who's going to take the time to go in and unless they're really curious and want to wait for an answer to prompt a question. So it's really so great that you can go in and create your own questions. And the follow up to that is like, but how do I know what they're going to ask for? And I always say, ask your frontline people, all
Yep.
your staff that are answering the phones, they know what the most common questions are coming in from patients that are wanting to schedule an appointment. Jot those down, find out from your people, and those are the questions you want to be asking on your Q&A section so you can head off some of those conversations. Again, we're eliminating the questions because the questions open opportunity for this might not be the best fit for me. I'm going to look elsewhere just out of
Right.
curiosity, versus being able to head those off and then in turn making it a little bit more efficient for your team when they're talking to patients because that way some of them are a little bit more primed for that conversation.
Yep.
Love it.
Posting. There's a section on Google Business Profile where you can post now. It's leading into the Google Business Profile is it's a social profile now, but you can post, and it doesn't. We don't recommend posting like it's Instagram or something like that. People aren't scrolling through with that same limited bandwidth. They're spending more time on it. But you can post either, if you have a blog that you're actively updating, you can post it to your Google Business Profile. If you have any events or any sort of pertinent information, you can be posting that on Google Business Profile. And again, it ends up helping your ranking. So as you're competing with all the practices in your area, if you're posting on there, Google is going to rank your practice higher. So it's not just having the best reviews. There's been times when we've had practices that like, why are we not showing up? We've got good reviews, we have lots of reviews, but there's other practices that are coming up above us. What's up? And some of that is through geographical proximity. So it's going to show the practices closest to the IP address of the person searching. But the other part is Google's looking at who's actively managing and monitoring their profile, who's engaging with this, and that gets ranked higher. Um, Products and services. Did you
Yeah.
have something?
No, I was going to say that's awesome. And I think it does play off of Q&A to your point. Like if you're
Yeah,
wondering what you can post, you can repost something that answers a question that's commonly asked, products and services. If there are specific, in the case of Endo, right, we talked a lot about how can you customize care or provide care that stands out to other endos in the area. So if you are providing things like sedation dentistry or comfort care where you have some more customized, personalized items that you offer to your patients, those are absolutely 100% the things you want to be highlighting in your posts. So that way they know what to expect and you stand out considerably.
absolutely. Um, and that's with products and services too. There is a products and services section where you can say these are the things that we offer, and you can put all those in. If they change, you should change them as well. But these are things that are nice that you do once and then you leave it. But again, if somebody's searching, you are increasing all of the odds of your profile coming up as the answer to the person's question, and minimizing any questions that somebody may have. It's, do you offer X? And it's like, yeah, it's under the products and services. It pops up and shows that you do that. Um,
Love it.
So moving into Google Business Profile as a social account. And just a quick reminder, if you have any questions on any of the items before, it's, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. And again, just throwing up, we've got a little freebie that'll help you out there towards the end. So Google
We love,
Business Profile as a social account. What is that?
I said we love freebies.
We love freebies. I do love freebies. If you treat like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, like people are consistently updating it. They're taking pictures of everything and updating their profiles. They're always active on those. Google Business Profile should be treated the same way. And again, it's not to say that you should be flooding your images, your photo section with just whatever's going on. You want to build up a solid profile that gives an accurate representation of what somebody can expect when they work with your practice. It's the first impression that they're going to get. So if you put, 20 or 100 photos in there, people most likely are not going to take the time to look through all those, but keep them updated. If there's an old photo that's no longer relevant, take it down. Be really specific with, like, as what foot forward do we want to present? How do we want to show up for people who have not they haven't been to our practice, they have no idea what to expect? What do we want them to see? What's the I hate the word, but the vibe of the practice? What can they expect?
And
But the
we
more
talked
that
about that last time, right? Because it's
yeah,
like if for those that have social anxiety, especially dental anxiety, like not knowing what environment they're going to walk into is a huge barrier. So, I mean, if they can
absolutely.
see what the inside of the practice looks like and somewhat familiarize themselves before they walk in, that's huge for a lot of patients.
It's interesting, but it certainly changed as society. We have all these opportunities to see something before we go in, and so we'll look and be like, we'll just kind of build that confidence on what to expect before you get there. And it's, we've worked with practices who are themed, whether they have, like, the doctor loves baseball, or what it may be, but we can show that up front on the Google business profile. So somebody says, I feel like I would be comfortable there. I look forward to my moving forward and going and working with the practice.
Yeah.
But if you're continuously updating it, one, it gives a good first impression to potential patients, but then it gives a good impression to Google as well. So on that last point here, Google's trying to build that perfect match. And the more information, the easier that you can make it for Google, the easier that Google will present that to somebody looking for an answer, the easier it is for them to again move forward. It's it, it's really very simple in all of this approach. It's just simplicity. We're trying to make it as simple as possible for the person looking for the solution to their problem, to pick you as that solution.
Yeah. And I love the concept of Google Business Profile as a social account because that's definitely something that I had never thought of before, but it makes total sense. And if anything, it makes more sense potentially than other social media accounts because number one, there's no entry fee. Everyone has access
Right.
to Google if they have access to the internet. So you're not putting up a technical barrier of they have to have a Facebook account in order to get to you, or they have to have an Instagram account to see the content that's valuable to them. This is accessible to anyone. So if you are at all on the fence, maybe you're thinking, well, should I be posting on social media? That's not necessarily a conversation we're going to be having today. I think it's very nuanced and specific to the practice and your demographics. But if you are at all kind of entertaining this idea of like, well, maybe we should get out there more, start with Google Business Profile first.
Yes,
First because
absolutely.
that's the one that's most likely to get to the majority of people that are looking for you anyway. Like Corey said, if they're looking for an address so they can put it into their car to drive to you, or trying to figure out where you're located so you're not too far away. Those are all things that they're doing and happen. They're essentially they happen to stumble upon your Google Business Profile and see all the other tidbits that add into that experience. So that was just kind of something that, again, it was an aha moment for me because I was like, duh, of course it's a social account and it's so accessible to so many more people than a standard social account where you actually have to have an account to get in there.
Right. Well, and that's just it. We've again talked to a lot of practices who ask that question, like, should we be posting more on Instagram? Should we be more active? Should we create TikTok videos? Should we do these things? And the process that it would take for somebody to find those accounts are a lot more difficult. Like, it's tough to stumble. Those profiles don't work in the same geographical manner, and so it's going to be tough for somebody to just stumble upon your practice on a social media profile. With Google, they're going to see it.
Yeah,
And so the
I
the
love.
same way that question of, well, what should I be posting, what should I put on my account, it's really a curation that's very similar to if you were to post on your personal social account. What do you want people to see? Are you a foodie? Are you a golfer? Are you, like, what are you trying to present? It's an image. You want people to understand, like, this is what I do. I love my dog. And so when somebody looks through there, they get an understanding of who you are as a person and what you like doing. They're the highlights of you. And with Google and your business, it's the exact same thing. What are the most beautiful features, or what are the best aspects of the practice? What do the staff look like? Are they friendly? Are they, does it look like people are having a good time? This isn't the place to put images of technical procedures or x-rays or it's not gonna. Meredith has her own opinions on that.
I do. Yes. Be careful with the clinical stuff. I mean, I feel like us dental people are super nerdy and we love the clinical stuff, but yeah, there are definitely some anxious patients that will have a big red flag that pops up if they see what a root canal looks like. But yes, absolutely. Definitely the ethos of your company and who you are for sure. I love
Yeah.
photos of the doctors as well because
Mhm.
again, that's heading off something for someone who has social anxiety or dental anxiety, right? There's a lot of variables they're dealing with. So let's narrow those variables down as much as possible. If I know what my doctor is going to look like, if I know what the practice is going to look like, I know who the person is that I'm going to see the minute I walk in the door. It really helps me understand, okay, now I can just focus on walking in, getting my paperwork done, and just moving on to the next thing. Just
Yeah.
really get a lot of those variables.
A little tip on this one too. Google will automatically put the Google Maps image, whatever's taken, as the view of your outside of the practice. It can be really helpful, especially if there's kind of a, a tricky process to get to your practice. I recently saw a business that had kind of a hidden door, and they posted that, like, this is the what the entrance to the building looks like,
Yeah.
and they made it very
Amazing.
simple.
You're in a business park because sometimes those business parks do not make it easy for you to find a
Right.
neat entrance, right? Or the medical parkways. I know, like if you go into some of those medical buildings, it's like on the fourth floor, and you go down this hall and take a left, and it's so hard to find the office for sure.
Yeah. I was just in Vermont, and there was a restaurant that again got really good reviews. It looked delicious. I was like, all right, I'm going there. And as I was reading through the reviews, they actually answered that question. People answered it, but they were like, this place was hard to find. It's tucked back. And they gave me like step-by-step directions on how to actually find it. But
Yeah,
without it, like
you
Google,
don't want an endo speakeasy. You don't
right.
want to do that. Yeah, you want to make it easy to find. I think that's great because that is definitely something to head off, right? If you're like, gosh, I'm trying to think of the different things that they need to know. Um, like I said, ask your front desk people, what are the questions? Because if there are some patients that are calling saying like, I'm having trouble finding your front door, boom, to your point, that's something that needs to go on the website for sure. Because again, it's not just preparing them for the experience, it's also taking the load off of your staff, right? If your
Yes.
staff are having to answer the phone and answer this question over and over again, make it easier on them and put that information out publicly so it's more likely to get to the patient, so they're not having to call and ask for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's we talk about this a lot more so with websites when you're developing a website, which will be a future webinar. Keep an eye out for that. But with a website or Google Business Profile, the main points here are just, what do you offer? How's it going to change my life? And how do I get it? And if you can showcase the answers to those three questions, what do you offer? You can show a friendly office. You can show a clean environment. You can show a welcoming experience, a great friendly staff. You can show those things really clearly in your description and your images, and now what do we offer? How's it going to change my life? Kind of ties into the same thing. On a website, you can go a little bit more in depth with this, but again, just showing happy people, or like, happy staff. That's a tougher one on Google Business Profile, but if you can address that, that's great. And then how do I get it? Ties into this last piece. You have your address, you have a phone number that somebody can get through to. You've got images of how to get there. Anything that somebody may get hung up on, you can address right away.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I want to address this really quick because this is a question that came through our chat before we get too far into the conversation. We did get a question that says, "How can you respond without violating HIPAA laws?" And just acknowledging that a person is a patient is revealing private information. So essentially, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I would imagine that this would probably be more likely to happen in a patient review.
Mhm.
Now, if the patient reveals themselves, that is not within your scope of what we call disclosing patient information, right? If you call them out and be like, hey, so and so, and they haven't indicated that they are a patient, then that's probably a little bit more problematic. But our go-to is always a phone conversation. First
Yep.
off, you should not be having full conversations in Google reviews. I mean, they're not
Oh,
really going to allow you that two-way communication anyway. So the best response is going to be a general response that you have elevated that issue to a higher level manager, right? Because we're giving priority to any sort of concerns that patient may have, regardless of the situation. And you are inviting them to a phone call
yes.
privately. So you are not contributing to validating them as a patient. You're not contributing to, confirming their treatment is what it is, or anything that they say in their review. You are not saying like, oh yeah, you came in for a root canal last Tuesday. I remember you. None of that. It's just simply, hi, so-and-so, thank you so much for your feedback. We take this very seriously. This particular scenario has been elevated to our higher level manager name. Please know we're trying to get in touch with you, or please call our office so we can discuss this over the phone. That's all
Exactly.
you can say. No one else in the reviews or viewing the reviews or who's left reviews needs to know what that conclusion is, unless it's a simple one. They really don't need to know what that conclusion is. They just need to simply see that you saw it, you addressed it, you assigned it to someone who has the power to most likely create the best outcome for that scenario. And you've given them multiple opportunities to reach out to you, or you've taken the initiative to reach out to them. So
It's
hopefully that helps. It's very generic, but at the same time, it hits all the key points that someone seeing that review and response would want to see.
That's perfect. We just had to deal with this. Unfortunately, with the practice, there was a scheduling issue. Uh, Patient was very upset. He wrote a pretty scathing review. He called it some office staff. Like it wasn't an ideal situation, and we responded with the general response. So sorry that you're dealing with this. We're on it. We've already contacted you. Um, Something along those lines, but not getting into any sort of detail. That person updated their review to say nobody's contact, but it started a conversation, and
Mm,
the practice was saying like, should we respond? How do we deal with this? The answer is no. Like that is not, Google is not a place to resolve issues. Meredith, as you said, like they don't have to know anybody else doesn't have to know the conclusion. Google does not allow you to have multiple replies. It is just one post and one reply. So that is not the place to get into the details of things. You just want them, realistically, what you want is anybody reading to know that everything's being taken care of and that you guys are on top of it.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see who asked that question, but that was a fantastic question. Thank you so much for bringing it up. If you guys have additional questions, please drop them in the chat. I am trying to pay attention to make sure I let that one go for a bit, but definitely drop more questions in the chat if you have them for sure.
yeah, thank you for asking that. It's again, we really want this to be interactive, and the reason why we put this together is to answer the questions that we get so much. So if you have them, please ask, and we'll address them as best we can. It's I heard once, if ever you're at events or anything, always be the dumbest person in the room. And I was like,
I
what does
love
that
that.
mean? Well, it's great. It's like if you have a question in your head and you don't want to be the person to ask it, the minute that somebody else does, you're like, I've been thinking about that the entire time. So it looks like your questions are anonymous. Great way to ask questions and yeah, be the dumbest person in the room.
I love it.
All right, so we've covered the customer journey. We covered the importance of ranking on Google. We've gone through some of the key features. We talked about how Google Business Profile is a social account. So now the question is, how do we stand out on Google? It's Google's not overly complicated, and so on these topics, we just want to make sure that first and foremost, you have a profile. Just a quick tidbit: sometimes if you don't create your own Google profile, Google will make one for you. So this can get a little tricky if Google recognizes that there's a doctor, it may create a Google business profile for that doctor and then a separate one for the practice. And so that question of what do I do with that? You can go and edit and have them merged, or you can delete profiles if they're not relevant. If it's an old business profile, just delete it. Make it very simple for people. We don't want confusion. So, first and foremost, have one Google business profile per practice per location. Make sure that it's complete so that you want to have each section something in there. If you go into your admin of Google Business Profile, um, it has boxes for everything, and it'll tell you if there's areas that still need to be completed. Make sure each one's filled out. Put something in there. But the most important, obviously, is an accurate address, including any suite numbers or anything like that, and an accurate phone number.
I love the location specificity because that was definitely something that I didn't immediately think of. But if you look at a Google business profile, one of the first things that that's going to list is a physical address. So it does make sense that if you do have different locations that you're offering to patients within your area, to have a separate Google business profile for each one of those. And maybe you're still posting similar content. Maybe the practices look different in terms of their interior photos, but maybe you're still posting similar content if the
Yeah.
services are similar. But to Corey's point, the addresses are very specific, right? And that matters because if patients are trying to find you or locate you to get there, they need to make sure that they're not incidentally like clicking on another location and kind of going to the wrong space. They need to be able to accurately find the location that they're going for. I thought that was clever because I hadn't even considered that before. And I know we have a lot of endodontic clients that have multiple locations for sure.
Yeah, and we have had that before where somebody Googles the practice and they end up going to a different location. And they're like, "Hey, I've got an appointment." And they were like, "Not here, you don't."
Yeah.
We want to minimize those errors. Again, making it this biggest thing about marketing is it's not making ourselves the hero and really standing out, but standing out as kind of just that, the hero. It's really about the patient and making this as simple as possible to answer those questions that they may have. And you can just think of it from your own personal perspective. Like, what things do I look at before I go to a restaurant? What things do I look at before I find a new hairdresser or a golf club or a course? What's important to me? And then look at your own profile and say, am I answering those same questions that somebody else may have? So make sure that it's full and complete.
We mentioned that in our last session that it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it moment, right?
Mhm.
So it's like once you start getting in the kind of headspace of saying like, okay, I need to think about things that my patients are facing, right, to help them head things off. And then sometimes it can be like, well, I don't know because I'm not my patient. So it's like you have to start thinking about yourself. Okay, if you see an advertisement or you see a Google business profile or you see something that works and you have a certain opinion about it that's positive, stop and think like, why do I like this? What is it
Yes.
about it that's standing out to me? And how can I replicate that in my own business? It takes some discipline and some time to kind of get in that headspace. But once you're in it, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you just keep applying it towards everything that you're doing in your own business. And again, sometimes you just got to get feedback from patients directly, right, to
Yeah.
to guide you and where to go. Yeah,
Well, and another nice little hack is you can look at competitors, other practices in the area and say, what do they have? And more importantly, what do they don't? Like, what can we showcase on here to be the practice that stands out? That main image, the first one that they see, they get one shot. And if they choose to click in and look at more photos, they can. But what can you do in that first photo to be the one that draws that person's eye? How
yeah,
can we really elevate ourselves as the solution to a potential patient's problem? Responding to every review. It's not just the negative ones. It's respond to every review. Have somebody in the practice. This is their role. They are assigned to this. And like for me, I can have it hooked up to my phone. And so every time a Google profile or a Google review comes in for any of the practices that we work with, sometimes my phone gets a little busy, but every time a review comes in for any practice, I see it. And we manage the Google profiles for our clients. And so we respond to it immediately. And that can be the same. You don't have to hire a marketing company to do so. You can have somebody in the practice who's connected. And so that every time a review comes in, they see that and they can just quickly jump in. The ideally not generic part is just address it. Like, thanks, we love having you as a patient. Can't wait to see you next time. Something that is not violating HIPAA, but recognizes that it's just a relationships are important to you and that you care about your patients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
just
and
saying like a
you can still keep it brief, right? It's just a
yes,
matter of you don't want every single one of your responses to be thank you.
right,
You want them to vary to some degree, right? Thank you so much for your feedback. It was a pleasure. Appreciate the review. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways that you can frame that appreciation. It's just a matter of making sure it doesn't look like you literally went in and copy and pasted all of your responses at that point, but you do
right.
not have to go in and write an entire novel, again,
No,
we're keeping it limited as far as like the specific patient information. But if they're coming in and the patient is saying, "Oh my gosh, I had the best root canal of my life," guess what? Someone already knows they've been a patient. So
right.
if you're just saying, "Thank you so much, it was a pleasure taking care of you," you're still in a green zone at that point. So yeah,
Well, and that's another area that is not overly clear, but it's a fantastic opportunity to showcase what it's like, what you guys are, how you approach your patients. And
yeah.
so showing the fact that you're genuine, that you care, that you take the time to cultivate even just a short response. As I'm reading through, you can tell the businesses that Meredith, like you said, is just like, thanks, thank you, thanks. Like
Mhm.
nobody cares here. Like I don't know what's going on. It just seems disingenuous and or not responding at all. I mean
Right.
that's not great either, but those
That may not be the intent, but it's kind of what
Mhm.
the perception is, right? So it's like, okay, well, if someone's going to see this, let's make sure that it looks like we are doing it with some intention for sure.
Right. And that can be that little thing that ticks somebody over the edge of being like that's really cool that they go through and respond to everybody with
Mhm.
kindness and like auth- auth- authenticity. That's it.
Yeah.
It's Friday. Posting. We recommend a post a week. It's not hard and fast, but post. Put updates on there. Put things out. It's not front and center. So the key thing here is mostly for Google. We're not approaching this with the idea that a lot of people are going to be clicking through and reading those posts, but it's going to help your analytics and it's going to help you stand out. And if you do have anything that's cool, it's a good place for it to go. But again, don't don't have that be your sole method of getting information out. Um, the analytics on that aren't the best for actually engaging with people, but posting definitely does help with the analytics to have your profile stand out and get chosen first.
When
We
we
talked
talk about the posting, well, first off, Corey, you always remind me that it's more about like posting consistently with intent instead of perfection. So it's
yes,
like, again, just kind of have an outline of what you would like to gradually share. Maybe you just have a list of things, and that's really what you are posting about
yep,
each week. But you also mentioned that when you do an update on Google Business Profile, Google will actually recrawl that site, which is, I mean, if you think about it, that's a great opportunity for you to get that much more. What's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like Google takes you a little bit more seriously every time you have, intent,
authority,
yeah, content in your Google Business Profile. So it's not like, oh, well, I've posted, but I'm not going to see the result for quite some time. I mean, Google takes that and immediately says like, okay, how is this going to impact their visibility for those patients that are looking for this particular service. I say patients, obviously Google doesn't think
right?
they're just looking in the endoscope, but for us, we know we want patients coming our way. So this is one of those things where if you stay consistent, you're just giving Google that many more opportunities to push you higher because you are, like you said, you're showing more authority with intentional content.
Yeah, absolutely. And Meredith, that's a great point. On it doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't a published paper. It isn't anything that needs to be. Most people scan quickly. So
Yeah.
if you think about how you read articles or you digest content, whether it's on social media or reading through Google or different sources, most of the time you're just scanning on what sticks out for you. What are the three quick bullet points that's relevant? And the text below oftentimes gets skipped, but this doesn't have to take a lot of time. It can be really quick, but just highlight some of those just the key ideas that you want to get across. It doesn't have to take a long time.
Mm.
We talked about building out your Q&A section and updating it. Do update it. It's if you continue getting questions, fill it out. Like keep the ones that are relevant. If something isn't or if something changes, update it. Um, it's not a social profile in the sense of, Instagram or one of those where you have to continuously be putting like new images or things up. Like once it's solid, you can keep it solid, but you want to keep it relevant. And if that relevancy changes, update it. Make sure that you're keeping on top, so it's not something that starts slipping through the cracks. If you get new products and services, there's a section for that. You can keep those updated. You don't have to put in things that aren't relevant just to put content in for no reason. You want to make sure that it's the information's valuable. Uh, but if things change or as they change, update them. And same goes with photos. If with staff changes or anything, I mean, we see this a lot with logos or offices. They'll do a great remodel. They'll have changes within the practice, but then they forget to update the Google Business Profile. Um, and photos there too. It's important to again give a great first impression. So whether you hire a photographer, that's always great if that's within your budget. But if not, a camera phone is amazing these days. And so you can get a cheap light on Amazon that just lights the room a little bit better if that's an issue, so the photos aren't dark. But you can take some great shots with your camera that just gives a really good visual of the practice. These are the
Corey,
biggest.
if they have like questions on the Q&A, I just thought of this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Um, if they have questions on the Q&A that maybe are addressing kind of financial and insurance questions, because I know those are definitely going to be some of the top ones that we're going to be addressing for patients coming in. Do you suggest in the answers section kind of saying this is kind of like a blanket statement to answer, but then for additional information, go to our website? Because I'm just curious as to whether or not that's something you want them to do, is to go to the website for
Yes.
more information. And if you feel like that is sufficient enough, because I would imagine that if you do have your website set up with the proper financial information or preparing patients, you might want them to go there so they can get more vivid, information about that particular question to begin with.
Yeah, that's great question. Um, Again, Google Business Profile is not the place to go really deep on those answers. You have a limited amount of space that you can work with within Google Business Profile, and you have a limited amount of time and attention and the UX and UI, like the user experience and interface on how somebody's going to interact with that. So if you can quickly and concisely answer a question, that's a great spot for it. What insurances do you take? You can have that listed out. But then, for more information, please visit the website. For financial things or conversations that have more of an in-depth answer, it's probably better to leave that out if it can't be quickly answered. You just have to ask yourself the question of is is my action or response providing an opportunity where it's opening the door for confusion and possibly have somebody fall out of that buyer journey, that consideration stage.
Awesome.
So speaking of Q&A, we're about to get into that. For those of you who stuck around, now it's time to figure out what the fun freebie is. We do for all the practices that we work with, we do it's a scorecard. And so we'll go through and assess your full Google business profile, all the different areas um, that are good and point those out. Any areas that need improvement, we'll point that out too, and really kind of do the legwork for you so that it's not guessing on, is it good? Is it Does it need work? Should I put this? Should I not? So we do that free scorecard, and we're offering that to everybody here. And so if you email, it's Alex, Alex, at hamiltonwise.com. It's our email. But if you email Alex, he will get you set up, and you do not have to be a client. There's no strings attached on this one. But we really want to help this process, and so we'll do that free scorecard for you and give you the information that you need to go and fill it out. If you want us to help, we can. But again, it's not intended as a sales pitch or anything like that. We really just want to help those practices to get through this process as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I dropped that email in the chat. So if you guys need to copy that, it's just a little bit easier to get to sometimes than just writing it down. So you're welcome to grab that. And Corey, if you're good, we do have a couple more questions that have come through that I'd like to address before we have a couple of questions that we just have, right, that we get from endo clients all the time, but we'll address these first. It looks like a question coming in. We have, what is the best way to check our website / SEO ranking?
So that's a more in-depth question. Kind of had a spoiler on this. We'll be doing a website webinar, I believe next month, and so we can cover that one on the website. SEO's it's a long conversation as far as search engine optimization. So I want to give it the time that it deserves. There are websites that you can use like SEM Rush. Um, you can just Google you can Google that question and some of those will pop up. SEM Rush is one that we use. It offers, I think, one or two free analysis. But SEO is one that it's a deep rabbit hole, and we don't based on our experience, we don't put a lot of emphasis on going too crazy on the SEO front, primarily because it's so geographically based and not keyword based. And so we put a lot of energy into the Google business profile because that's the thing that's most likely going to pop up first. And then it's got the little button right there for your website. So instead of trying to rank high for keywords and fill out your website with a bunch of words that don't really matter to other people, we focus on Google Business Profile first. We found that to be the fastest way for people to get to your website.
Yeah, and I mean, it's slightly nuanced, but it is somewhat separate from Google Business Profile, right? Google Business Profile is kind of that entry point. You
Yes.
want it to be a main lead-in point to your website, but then, of course, to your point, there's a whole slew of tools that you can use on the back end to record how your site overall is performing, and then what portion of those visitors are coming in specifically from Google, your Google Business Profile. So we can definitely go into that. One thing I didn't mention though, and I meant to, if you guys are looking at these tools that we've talked about today in the Google Business Profile area, these are all free tools,
Yes.
right? It is possible that once we start talking about the website conversation and SEO and things like that, you might start running into some services that you're paying for, but just know on an entry level Google Business Profile and all the tools we've talked about today are free. So it's
Yes.
kind of a no-brainer, right? If it is your low-hanging fruit social account, why not utilize it since it is in fact free? And then it looks like Leah does have her hand raised. Hold on just a second. Leah, I'm going to let you come up to the front if you would like to talk. It looks like you are unmuted now. Leah, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, Leah.
Hi. Hi. Hello. Thank you for the webinar, guys. It's been very informative. I just wanted to comment. I've been waiting for the email for Alex in the webinar chat, but it says chat is disabled and nothing has come up. I really do want
Okay.
to get that free scorecard because my boss has been asking what our website ranking is. We're an endo practice.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you. Got it. AlexHamiltonWise.com. Great.
That was my mistake. Thank you so much for letting me know that. Apparently I had it set to just our panelists, so only Corey was getting it, and Corey doesn't need it because he's partners with Alex. So thank you for that.
All right,
I'm
that was it. Thank you for the great presentation, guys. I'll be here till the end.
Oh, thanks, Leah.
wonderful. Thank you, Leah. Thank you.
Yeah, and
All
just
right.
to clarify, the scorecard, it doesn't have anything to do with the website, although we're happy to have that conversation as well. If you want to set that up, we can walk through. Again, we've been doing this a long time and have seen through, we're a very database company. And so opinions, they don't go far with us. And so based on the data and analytics that we've seen over, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of websites and practices, we've got that down pretty good and are happy to walk through and just kind of give some recommendations. If you have a current marketing company, or if you'd like to do some updates, we can certainly talk about that on the website front. That one's just a little bit more in depth. Uh, for the free scorecard, that's on the Google Business Profile itself.
Yeah. Awesome. And I actually think that leads into our next question. So Dr. Luba, so glad to see you here today. She asked, for posting for Endo, do we post like videos of root canals? As a specialist, I don't get what we should be posting in there. And that makes total sense, right? Because I definitely think that there are times where we have a little bit of trouble delineating between what's the information that our patients need versus what we think that they need, right? And I definitely want Corey to speak to this for sure, but just from the side of my experience of taking care of patients, I think really the fine line is, what do patients need to feel comfortable to walk in the door, right? Everything else treatment wise, we can take care of once they get there. But I do want to emphasize just being careful about the clinical content that you share with patients, especially for those that are anxious. Most patients want to know that a root canal is going to save their tooth, and while it is a more expensive option, it is a more viable option for maintaining that dentition over time. That's the positive side of things. They don't want to know that you're going to drill into the tooth and pull the nerve out.
Right.
That is a detail that can definitely be left out for the vast majority of patients, right? Now, while there's a lot of clinical information we would love to share, because within that procedure, there are a lot of benefits, right? We want to make sure that patients know what those benefits are. Typically, it's better to have that verbal conversation with the patient in person and maybe just kind of skirt along the high level of what that treatment means for them. Most patients do not need to see verbatim 1, 2, 3 steps of what it takes to have a root canal done. I know that there are a lot of websites that will leverage ADA or AAE videos of treatments and how they're done. At the end of the day, it's your practice. If that's something that you want to share, you absolutely can. It is just important to keep in mind that you may have some anxious patients that find that a bit off-putting. So it's just a matter of, let's not introduce additional obstacles if we can help it with our patients, and really focus more on the content that is specific to their overall experience, right? And Dr. Luba, something that comes to mind to me, because I love your company ethos, your practice ethos, is really more along the lines of the experience you are trying to create for your patients. I
Yes.
know that is more of a holistic approach, right? And emphasizing that in your Google Business Profile. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of something that Corey mentioned before, and I know we're close to time here, so I want to be brief on this. Corey mentioned, look at what your other competitors are not doing, because
Yeah.
that is where you're shining. What are you doing that helps you stand out? And let that be the forefront of your care. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to highlight the clinical steps of everything that you're doing, but just the overarching, the things that you're doing to kind of make your experience a little bit better and stand out from your competitors. I'm getting really wordy here. So Corey, I'm gonna let you take over from there.
No, that was a perfect answer. Anything like the minute that you start going down that rabbit hole of like procedures or it opens up a conversation for questions, and now it's a conversation. It's not just a quick post, and you don't have the ability to address any questions that somebody may have. So you want to keep things high level. So things like promotions. If you're running anything, promotions can be a spot there. Events, any events that you're having, employee shout outs is a really cool one. Whether it's a new employee or just highlighting some of the employees in the practice, it's great for practice culture and team morale. But it's a good place for, again, to highlight the introduction to somebody who doesn't know your practice yet, and have them start to feel like they're part of your family, your practice. You can build those relationships early, but definitely along the high levels there. And
I think we talked
expertise.
about to like the emotional aspect of your customer's journey, right? We always talk about how, in most cases, we say customers, but in this case, we're talking about patients. Patients are influenced by their emotional drivers. There is no shortage of emotional drivers in dentistry, right? Especially with so many patients that are anxious with dental care. So perhaps one thing that you can do, or maybe it'll steer at you in kind of the more of the, not the right direction, but give you some insights of where you can go, is when you are asking your questions in your Q&A, maybe ask some generic questions about like, what does the scheduling process look like? Or what is, what insurances do you take and things like that, but leave room for emotional questions. Like, what if I'm really nervous or anxious about treatment? What is that experience going to look like for me?
That's a
And
great one.
that is huge, because not only does it allow them to see the answer, how you approach those very sensitive scenarios, but it validates that their emotions and their feelings and nervousness about the treatment is not uncommon.
Right.
It's shared by most patients, right? And I think that's definitely something that patients with social anxiety face on a regular basis of, I'm anxious, but I'm scared to tell anyone because I don't want to become that patient, right? When in all actuality, we realize that that patient is the majority of our patients, right? So kind of treating it on the basis of, let's just assume everyone's anxious about this treatment coming in, right?
Yeah.
And how do we address those emotions, not just the questions that they have about, how am I going to pay you? What insurances do you take? Where do I find you in this business park? All of those things. Go to those emotional drivers as well, if you can help it. And it's possible. I mean, this is speaking to everyone here, not necessarily just Dr. Luba, but it is possible that you might be hearing those things. If you're chairside and you're asking the patient how they're doing and they're saying, oh my gosh, this was so much better than I expected, I thought it was going to be this big deal, try and figure out a way to format that into an emotional question that can relate to other patients. Because I guarantee you are definitely going to find patients that feel the same way.
Yep. Yeah, in this customer buyer journey, in the story, the practice is not the hero, the patient is the hero, and you get to be the guide who helps them get the positive success that they're looking for within their story. And if you can make them feel like you have authority on the topic, which you obviously do, and that you have empathy with how they feel, Meredith, you said it perfect. Like, we understand. A lot of our patients come in nervous, and we get that. It's saying those little words like, we get that. Most patients, XYZ, we get it. It's
Yeah,
going to make so many people feel comfortable in moving forward and be in good hands.
amazing. We are over time, so I just want to be sensitive to that. I know that if some of you need to hop off, we will still finish out this Q&A section. If you need to catch it on the recording, that is totally fine. Just want to make the most of everyone's time. Corey, did we have a few question prompts? Yeah, that thought I remembered we had a few left. I think we addressed maybe a couple of these so far in the process. Yeah, like definitely, how do I know what to post? Yeah. That one is still going to be very specific to every practice, right? But you can always start with asking questions. Like when
Yep.
you don't know, just ask questions. Ask questions to your staff, ask questions to your patients. Um, you will find content kind of creates itself when you get in the habit of asking questions, for sure.
Yep. Highlighting your staff, celebrating them can be a great way to have find easy content.
Yeah.
Best way to manage Google Business Profile is to have somebody dedicated to do it. Make it a priority to do it completely, and just make sure that it goes all the way through. Don't start and then stop and forget about it. Have somebody who's dedicated to it. Have somebody who's dedicated to the reviews and have those notifications turned on so they see them each time a review comes in. A dedicated person, whether it's a company or whether it's somebody inside your staff. Um, Having somebody managing it is dedicated to managing it is by far the best. We've talked about, how do we build a QA section? How do I know if what I'm doing is working? Two ways. One, your reviews are going to go up, um, and then you're going to get more business. If you get a little bit more down the rabbit hole of this, there's analytics. So Google has analytics. Google Business Profile has analytics. You can look at how many people are seeing your profile, how many people are engaging with your profile, interacting with it. You can see how many people are clicking to go to your website, how many people are clicking to call the practice. That's a tab for that, especially on your phone. You can just click call your practice and it pops up. Um, you can see those things. So there are analytics within Google Business Profile that you can be checking, and there's analytics within Google Analytics where you can see that people are coming to your website through through your Google Business Profile. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Meredith, Alex, or myself. But yeah, we're on top of the free scorecard. We're always happy to answer questions. Again, there's no strings attached on that one. We want to be here to help. Should I have different updates for each location if they're pertinent? If they're relevant to all practice, cool. It's nobody's going to be going through and comparing each location. They're going to see the one closest to them, and that's the one that they're going to look at. So Google's not going to lower your ranking for having multiple content or multiple pieces of content. You just want to make sure that it's relevant. So if it is to the practice, absolutely post it. If it's the same for all three practices, post them on all three profiles. And then this is actually a great question. I don't see my current marketing company or manager doing this. How do I have this conversation with them? Eh, the easiest one is just be upfront. If you have a current marketing company, you'll have the scorecard. You can give it to them and be like, hey, can you guys update this for me? If they're not doing it, just being transparent, I would be concerned because you're paying somebody for a service, and this is very, very important. So if they're not doing it at all, I would seriously consider either having a conversation or asking some deeper questions on whether or not what you're paying, if you're getting what you're paying for. Um, yeah, I don't want to go too far down this, but we see it a lot where people are paying a lot of money and they get kind of roped into those buzzwords like SEO, and it seems confusing. And once you're confused, you feel like you're stuck and have to do it because you don't understand it, but it's not actually getting updated. So we've seen a lot of doctors get taken advantage of that way. So just make sure that you understand what they're doing, and that they're doing what they say they're doing. If they've just missed something, not a big deal, not as big of a deal. They should be on top of it, but just have the conversation. Um, Use the free scorecard. Uh, there are articles out there that you can read about if you want to educate yourself a little bit more, or you can just talk to us, and we're happy to give you the answers.
Well, and it's remembering too that Google Business Profile is your entry point, right? Unless
Yeah,
someone is going to your specific URL, they are opening up their phone or their computer and doing a simple search for your business or for a category that you fall in under.
right.
So the ideal circumstance is that your Google Business Profile gets them to your website at that point.
Exactly.
So if it's not performing where it needs to be, that's the question that we're raising. It's not necessarily to create any sort of conflict or excessive
Right.
challenges. It's just simply we want them to get to our website. So let's make sure that we are just leveraging every possible free tool that we can to get patients to our website whenever possible.
Yeah, marketing has this idea that it has to be expensive to be effective, and it doesn't. Like everything that we've discussed here is free and simple enough where you can do it yourself. You don't have to hire somebody if you don't want to. If you want to, you can. Um, but it's free. And the big thing that we're trying to avoid here is it's losing money. You're not gaining attraction or attention with this, but you're preventing the loss of potential patients. And that can be very costly if this isn't done just simply on the people who don't go to the website, who don't schedule the appointment, who don't work with your practice. We want to avoid that.
And Corey, one thing that came to mind, just because I'm a visual person, and fortunately, I'm very familiar with how the Google Business Profile from the admin side is set up. Is there potentially maybe a URL or something that we can find that shows where to find those elements? I'm sure Google has it, but that might be something that I just thought that might be something we want to put in our email after this meet, just so that way, if you are trying to orient yourself with the various aspects and tools we talked about today, you can see where those are. As he mentioned before, they're pretty succinct. I mean, when you log into your Google Business Profile admin, it pretty much says like, hey, your profile is like 19% complete. Here's how you can fill it out, whether it's content that's pertinent or content that's not pertinent, and you skip it, whatever that is, it pretty much walks you through it. But just kind of having that visual aid is sometimes nice. So perhaps what we can do is include a URL where when you're kind of going through this information, you can say, okay, this is what the posts look like. Okay, now I have a better idea of the content I can create because I know what the patient experience is going to look like a little bit more. We didn't want it to be too much of a Google Business Profile how-to. This is more of strategy, but it definitely can include that. I don't know if you found something, Corey, but I can definitely dig something up if we need it.
Yeah, it's I looked it up, but I didn't have to. I don't know. It's one it's Friday and ending a webinar. But yeah, it's business.google.com.
Okay,
So if you just
perfect.
go to business.google.com and you're signed into your Google account, it if you've claimed your Google business profile under your account, it will pop up. If you have multiple locations, all of those locations will show up. And then from there, you can click into view profile and then you can edit your profile. But business.google.com, and whatever account that you're signed up with, if it's connected to that profile, it will show you all those accounts.
Amazing. All right. Well, I've got it in the chat, and I think that is time for us. I know we are 12 minutes over. Thank you guys so much for
Yeah,
those of you
thanks,
that
guys.
are with us, especially on this Friday afternoon. It was lovely to have you all here.